All right, we live. Hey, shalom, shalom.
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 Hayawam tawab la'atam, which is good day unto you all. Anachna wahai bar yasha'Allah. We the Hebrew Israelites coming to you week in and week out through the spirit and power of Yahweh Bahasham Yahweh Shai to preach to you so-called Negroes, Latinos, Native Americans, West Indians, Haitians, Israelite foreigners. Chamatam kaya hamalakata shamayim kwarab. Repent ye, for the kingdom of heaven is at hand. First and foremost, before we get started, we're going to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh Bahasham Yahweh Shai Bahasham Ruach HaKodesh. While double honors to the elders and apostles of Great Millstone that taught us truth and rule well. And much respect to you, bro, that pushing the truth with all righteousness and sincere. Shalom, shalom.
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 All right, so another edition of News and Prophecy, and it's entitled Growing American Uncertainty. All right, and pretty much, as we were going into before we cut on the camera. All right, it's a growing level of uncertainty in these Babylonians. At one point, essentially these people could confide behind the guise of, what they call religion. And they could hide behind their money. They could hide behind, whatever it is that, they're essentially entrusted in, but essentially, now these Americans are, they don't have anywhere to hide. And that's by way of, the prophecies being manifest. So could we start with Habakkuk chapter 2 and verse 2? And I'm gonna get this real fast. This is Second Esdras chapter 2, and we'll get verse 9. And Second Esdras chapter 9 and verse 1. It says, he answered me then and said, measure thou the time diligently in itself, and when thou seest part of the signs past, which I have told thee before. You see, because ultimately the men of the Lord, the watchmen, are pursuant to Isaiah 62 and 6, are essentially sitting upon that wall, all right, and watching to see, lining up the prophecies with current events. All right, verse 2, it says, then shalt thou understand that it is the very same time wherein the highest will begin to visit the world which he made. Therefore, when there shall be seen earthquakes and uproars of the people in the world, in which it's an earthquake just about every day. All right, they even have like an app to where they're measuring it upon the Richter scale. But then it's also the ones that they don't pretty much gauge. The smaller ones. It says in uproars. It's a lot of uproars. At one point, um, they were reporting on uproars in France. We don't see any updates about in France. You see, but it's uproars of people in the world. Currently. Verse 4 says, then shalt thou well understand that the Most High spake of those things from the days that were before thee, even from the beginning. The end was prophesied from the beginning. It says, for like as all that is made in the world hath a beginning and an end, and the end is manifest. The end is manifest is here. A prophecy is speaking, and essentially, when we speak, we feel everything in our body, and those around us, feel the vibrations of the words that we speak, you see. So being that the end is manifest, everybody is feeling the effects of this vision speaking,
That's right.
Could we get Habakkuk 2 and we start verse 1.
Khan,
I
Khan.
got it. You got it, Yeshaya.
All right, Khan. This is Habakkuk 2 and verse 1. It reads, I will stand upon my watch and set me upon the tower,
Right,
and I
because
will watch.
it says I will stand upon my watch, because through the spirit, we've been made overseers. So the job of a watchman is to watch upon that watchtower. You keep going, Babu Shah.
Khan, it says, and will watch to see what he will say unto me, and what I shall answer when I am reproved.
Pretty much lining up prophecy with current events.
Right. Verse 2, it says, and the Lord answered me and said, write the vision and make it plain upon tables, that he may run that readeth it.
Right, and that vision ultimately is talking about the prophecies, and it says, and make it plain upon tables, that he may run that readeth it. And ultimately, it's being made plain. That word for plain goes into the same word for a well. So that word is ba'ar. All right, and with the well, everything is essentially to make a well. You got to dig everything up. All right, and it has to be pushed forth. That dirt, everything that was inside there is being put forth. So in comparison to the prophecies, everything about a specific prophecy is being put forth. All right, and ultimately, what the believers need to do. That's why it goes into being made plain upon tables, so that the believers can understand, what to do in these times, because the prophets have been given the vision. All right, because again, that word for vision is chaza. All right, cha goes into a wall, za goes into cut down. All right, it's a tool, it's a weapon to cut down. So the prophets have the vision. They could see past that wall. So it's like the prophets is on that wall, they on that watchtower, and it's like, hey, this is going on. So that's the spiritual parallel and the correlation to where it's being made plain upon tables, because essentially the prophets are giving an accurate report about what's going on in this spiritual warfare, the spiritual forecasters.
Con.
You keep going to verse 3, Baba Kushan.
Verse 3, it says, "For the vision is yet for an appointed time, but at the end it shall speak and not lie. Though it tarry, wait for it, because it will surely come. It will not tarry."
So it says, for the vision is yet for an appointed time. We had me and the brother Quantum Waff did a video going into, the prophecies won't disappoint. All right, it's not going to disappoint. This means no. Appoint means pretty much not appoint, but it says the prophecies pretty much, this is the vision is yet for an appointed time, so it has an appointed time. Prophecy isn't going to disappoint. It says, but at the end it shall speak. It's speaking. The end is manifested, and again, going back to the point made in the spirit, like when we speak, it's being felt. So what the Lord spoke, the end was prophesied from the beginning. All right, essentially everyone is feeling it. That's why the Lord said, in Sirach the 15th chapter, or 2nd Ezra 15, let not the incredulity of them trouble thee that speak against thee, for all the unfaithful shall die in their unfaithfulness. You see, because it's a part in this movie for everyone. The prophets are essentially abiding by their role, just like 2/3 is abiding by their role. Esau Edom is playing his role. Essentially everybody, the prophecies are going to be manifest, and everybody's going to feel it.
That's right. Pretty much, ain't nobody going to be able to escape.
Right.
The times that we're coming into. The Most High's, like the scripture says, the Most High's word is not going to go out void. And it's being made obvious through the events and the pretty much, like you mentioned, how the watchmen are the spiritual weathermen. They're keeping watch and they're watching the current events of what's going on, and the watchmen are making it plain, to the people on the other side of the wall, right, making them being breaking it down of what's happening, what's going on, right. But I got a quick one, if I may, just to add to your point, because you mentioned, the vision is here. The what was spoken about in the scriptures is happening, and we see it take place right now. It's very prevalent. Prophecy is very prevalent, because this is why, going into this video, we're seeing that everybody is feeling something. Everybody is in this state of, that something is about to happen. But this is let me get this real quick. This is 2nd Ezra 4, Salakia. 2nd Ezra 4:37. Going into the prophecies, it says, "By measure had he measured the times, and by number hath he numbered the times, and he does not move nor stir them until said measure be fulfilled." And seeing that we're at the end of times, we're in the end of this man's rulership, we're seeing that the prophecies is coming one after another, after another, after another. Of course, certain things had to be fulfilled until the end is here, but that measure is being filled, man. That sand, the sands, like they talk about the sands of time, that sand is getting closer and closer to being pretty much done.
Right.
But you got it.
I'm gonna get this real fast. I'm gonna get this real fast, and then we can go into the article. If you didn't have nothing, I'll toss one. But this is
bear with me one moment.
Okay. I'm gonna read
You
this.
go ahead, bro. You go.
Okay. I'm gonna read this real fast. This is Mashal Yah, Proverbs 22 and verse 3. It says, "A prudent man foreseeth the evil and hideth himself, but the simple pass on and are punished." All right, and ultimately, that prudent man goes back to a man of wisdom, a man of knowledge. Ultimately, we're hiding ourselves, all right, in this truth. It says, "A prudent man foreseeth the evil." Eve goes into a time, ill goes into bad, so bad times. You know, we essentially through the spirit we can see the bad times approaching. It says, "A prudent man foreseeth the evil and hideth himself, but the simple pass on and are punished." And ultimately, you know, scriptures say a wicked man hardeneth his face. You know, so um, 2/3 essentially they're essentially hardening their face. And when it says harden, I mean it goes into a poker face. They're pushing forth a image of they know what's going on. You know, they have that confidence, you see. But you know, before we cut on the camera, you know, we was going into how, you know, 2/3 of Jake, you know, essentially they had that false sense of confidence. You see, well, that confidence is waning. All right, and that's why we see, you know, a lot of American uncertainty currently. You know, they don't have
Mhm.
anything to confide in. They don't have anything to essentially trust in. You know, that money, the money system. This money is not worth anything. All right, these so-called religions are they're not essentially providing any answers. Are pursuant to Habakkuk the second chapter from verse 16 on down. You know, because it was just made, you know, to look good. I'm gonna get that real fast. This is Habakkuk chapter 2, and we'll get verse 16 or verse 17, excuse me, verse 18. It says, "What profiteth the graven image, that the maker thereof hath graven it, the molten image, and the teacher of lies, that the maker of his work trusted therein to make dumb idols." And essentially, you know, these idols, these false philosophies, are teachers of lies. All right, it says to make dumb idols. These things aren't even speaking. All right, in these times that we're in. All right, JC ain't telling, you know, his followers to, you know, do anything wise in these times. He just sitting up on the wall. All right, Buddha ain't saying nothing. No Islam, they ain't doing nothing. It's just something that look good, and that's why verse 19 goes into this. It says, "Woe unto him," which woe means misery and destruction. "Woe unto him that saith to the wood, awake to the dumb stone." All right, that wood, you know, goes into Christianity and its, you know, various different so-called Christianity and its various different factions. It says, "Awake to the dumb stone," that Kaaba stone in Islam. It says, "Arise, it shall teach. Behold, it is laid over with gold and silver, and there is no breath at all in the midst of it." You know, that breath represents understanding. There's no understanding in these all philosophies. All right, but then it says it's laid over with silver and gold, or gold and silver. You see, because it only looks good. You know, Jake only go to these churches on Sunday, you know, because it make them feel good. They give a speech. You know, they put on they little penny loafers. All right, they little monkey suit. All right, and make Jake feel good on Sunday just to do the same wickedness the following week. You know, these things don't have any type of spiritual benefit or implications, you know.
Mhm. May I get something for you?
Hmm.
This is Isaiah 41 verse. I'll start at 21. It says, talking about these idols, right? It says, "Produce your cause, saith the Lord Yahweh. Bring forth your strong reasons, says the King of Jacob. Let them bring forth and show us what shall happen. Let them show us former things, what they be, that we may consider them and know the latter end of them, or declare us things to come." It says, "Show the things that are to come hereafter, that we may know that ye are gods. Yea, do good or do evil, that we may be dismayed and behold it together." Right, and this is what, like, the brother Yawan was going into. These idols, all these other philosophies, you know, whatever it is that, you know, people subscribe to, they're not showing them these things. They're not telling them the things that we're seeing, you know, as far as prophecy is concerned. They're not telling you how to get ready, how to prepare for the times that we're coming into, you know, how to prepare for salvation, how to escape nuclear warfare. Right? These are the things that we're seeing, that's very prevalent as far as the news and as far as the world is concerned. But they're not, these other things, other philosophies or whatever idols, religions. They're not telling you how to get ready for these things. You know, they're keeping people docile, keep lulling people back to sleep. You know, but that was pretty much the point, though. You got it.
Can you get the I got two. Can you get the etymology of the word uncertain?
Uncertain. Con.
But this is Isaiah chapter 24 and verse 11. It says, "There is a crying for wine in the streets. All joy is darkened. The mirth of the land is gone." All right, and essentially that wine represents, you know, answers. You know, it's no people are wanting answers. Nobody knows, you know, what's going on in the world. All right, it's thing after thing after thing. These Babylonians can't seem to get any type of stable foundation. All right. So it says uncertain. It says uncertain. It says of indeterminate time or occurrence. It says in which the scriptures say, we have a more sure word of prophecy. You know, so we have
Mm-hmm.
something stable, something firm. All right, they don't have any type of. They built their house on that sand. That's just what it go back to. They built their house on the sand. We know what happened to, the sand when we was younger. The sand castles.
Mm-hmm.
It says uncertain adjective. It says early 14th century of indeterminate time or occurrence, also unknown, unknowable. It says not firm or fixed, unreliable, random. So they just doing what they trusting in is totally at random. It says from not. It says certain in reference to persons not fully confident, lacking in sure knowledge. It is recorded from late implied uncertainty. Could you click on that, Barbara Kushar?
Okay.
And it says character or state of being uncertain, a state of doubt, unreliable nature, lack of assurance, state of not being definite. And pretty much it go back to this. I'm gonna get this real fast. This is I got two. This is Hebrews chapter 4 and verse 2. It says, for unto us was the gospel preached, as well as unto them, but the word preached did not profit them, not being mixed with faith in them that heard it. All right, and ultimately, the elect, faith is flourishing in the elect. You see, this word was preached across the four corners of the globe. All right, it's continuously being preached. All right, you see, but they wasn't given, they wasn't blessed with the faith. All right, in this truth. But I'm gonna get this too. This is Second Esdras chapter 8. Second Esdras chapter 8 and verse 50. And it says for many Salat. You got precept, Yeshaya?
God, I got one.
Okay, you go ahead.
This is Jeremiah 50, because pursuing the prophecy, what we're talking about is pretty much Jacob's trouble is what's coming down the pipe, right? And that's that uncertainty, that people have of not knowing pretty much how to deal with these times that we're coming into. But this is Jeremiah 50 and verse 34, which, like I said, this Jacob's trouble is really going to hit the whole world, but it's really going to take Jake. Jake is going to get washed away like pretty much like when a tsunami hits, and it takes everything that it hits. That's pretty much how Jake is going to be taken, man. He's going to be taken like a tsunami takes the seashore. This is Jeremiah 50 and verse 37. It says, the sword is upon their horses and upon their chariots and upon all the mingled people that are in the midst of her, and they shall become as women. Right. And they're going to become as women because, like you mentioned, that foundation that they have, they built it upon sand. Whenever that foundation is going to be tested, all these people's foundation is going to be tested, and it's going to be found lacking. It's going to be found that they didn't establish themselves on a strong foundation. So that's why they're going to break down and they're going to become as women.
Right.
It says, a sword is upon her treasures, and they shall be robbed. It says, a drought is upon her waters, and they shall be dried up, for it is the land of graven images, and they are mad upon their idols. And that's what you see that people are crazy, man, upon their idols.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? Like it had driven our people mad to the point of almost pretty much insanity. It's ridiculous the amount of faith that these people put on their idols. But then when it comes to our Lord Yahweh and Yahweh Shai, especially our people, they have no faith. But when it comes to Jesus Christ or Mary, like Northern Kingdom loves to worship Mary, they go all out, man. It's to the point where they'll kill you if you speak anything bad about, their idols, man. And that's pretty much what it's going to come down to. But in this time that we're speaking about, Jacob's trouble, they're going to realize that all these idols or the things they've been clinging to for hope and salvation is going to be of naught, man. It's going to be nothing.
God, I got this real fast. This is Second Ezra chapter 16 and verse. Actually, could we get the article first, and I'm gonna read this.
Con. So this is a Business Insider, right? Now, of course, we can't go into the article because it has a paywall. But here in the top it says Americans are looking to stock up on gas masks, emergency meal kits, and power banks as anxiety builds.
Right, and it says Americans looking to stock up on gas masks. All right, so the question would be why would they need gas masks? Because they understand that it's a level of uncertainty. All right, in the government. All right, going into biological warfare. You know, where they're using different things. Because pretty much what has happened in the states. All right, is pretty much a war on the people. You know, so it says emergency meal kits. You know, they understand that, you know, food is going to run out. All right, the famine. All right, then it says power banks. All right, because what has been spoken about, EMP attacks. All right,
Mhm.
the banks. All right, it says as anxiety builds. So not only are they trying to get gas masks, emergency kits, and power banks, it's already anxiety building. You see, because what's going on. All right, Isaiah 19 and 1 and 2. You know, essentially going into how, because at first, you know, everybody, you know, would essentially be in this conglomerate type of spirit. All right, it's no longer like that. All right, essentially everybody's at each other's necks. All right, I'm gonna get this real fast. Or you
Mhm.
can finish it out, bro.
Con. So it says search interest is up for retail products that offer a sense of security in uncertain times. The
Hmm.
list of supplies suggests Americans have much on their minds, whether it's war or weather.
Right. So it says the list of supplies suggests Americans have much on. So again, it was already a lot on their mind. Besides the gas masks, the meal kits, and the power banks, it's a lot more stuff. You know, going on. You know, ultimately going into how we broke down the word for rain. Matar. Ma goes into water. Ta goes into surround. Ra goes into the head. Water surrounds the head. All right. We understand that the Lord says His water or His word drops like the rain. You see, how does rain do? You know, rain. Could you get that Deuteronomy 32 and 2?
Con.
Hey, Salakia Akim, I gotta disconnect.
Okay, Khan. Shalom,
Con,
bro.
con.
Shalom
Shalom,
Akim.
Mak.
Yabashino Shai Bashim Kakarash Bagatam.
Yahweh Bahasham, Yahweh Shah
Yahabashim,
Bahasham,
Shah,
Chagrash
Bashim,
Bakatah,
Kakarash,
Shmarbata.
Barakatah.
Likewise.
So you said Deuteronomy 32 and 32?
32 and 2.
Oh, 32 and 2, Salakia.
Mm-hmm.
This is Deuteronomy 32 and verse 2. It says, my doctrine shall drop as the rain, my
Mm-hmm.
speech shall distill as the dew, as a small rain upon the tender herb, and as the showers upon the grass.
Right. The Lord's doctrine drops as the rain. All right. And what's entailed in that doctrine? Prophecy. You see, so this water is falling upon it. Matar goes into that word for rain. Ma goes into water. Ta goes into surround. Ra goes into the head. Water surrounds the head. You see, because this truth is surrounding the heads of the elect. All right. You see, but those outside of this truth, the prophecy is essentially surrounding their heads as well. Going back to that the topic in that article, it said it seemed like Americans got a lot on their mind. You know, so either this truth is going to surround the heads for good of the elect, all right, and then for those that are on the opposite side of prophecy, the bad side of prophecy, it's going to surround their minds. You see, but it's going to surround their minds in a different type of way because they ultimately got judgment pending.
Right. That ultimately goes back to Luke 21:25, if I may get that.
Mm-hmm.
This is Luke 21 and verse 25. It says, and there shall be signs in the sun and in the moon and in the stars, and upon the earth distress of nations with perplexity, the seas and the waves roaring. Right, talking about that distress, and that's what we're seeing coming upon the people. Distress, man. They're not sure. That anxiety is kicking into these people to the point where, like, they're just panic buying now. You know, they're just looking up, Google searching, asking AI, you know, what they need to survive, to stock up on, so that way they can, you know, prepare for the worst case scenario. But like it says, let me get that back. It says Americans are looking to stock up on gas masks, emergency meal kits, right? Going into a famine, right? Power banks, like you mentioned, power outage. This is as anxiety builds.
And if I can mention, my bad.
Go ahead, guys. So like, go ahead.
And if I can mention too, like we was talking about the other day, it said power banks because what was the energy companies talking about? In this area, they said, "Hey, y'all need to cut off y'all AC from 4 to 8." Cause we they talking about it's already hot as fuck. They said cut off the AC or cut off the pretty much tone back on the on the energy usage. You see, because of they don't want any type of outages, and now they about to start doing forced outages. So
yeah,
they're
talking about planned outages.
Yep.
But it says search interest is up for retail products that offer a sense of security in uncertain times. Right. That's what they're searching. People are searching for security.
Right.
And they're gonna start, like I said, they're gonna start panic buying in all these products that provide a certain type of security, whether it's guns, ammo, food, canned goods, certain type of security like cameras, all these types of things, are about to be high on demand. Fuel, because especially with that war going on over there in the Middle East with Iran and Israel, best believe prices on gas is going to start going up. So really, these people are having perplexity on all sides.
I got a little bit more in that article. It says the data also shows increased searches for riot gear. What you need riot gear for? It says searches for riot gear and hurricane preparedness kit during the same period, which suggests U.S. shoppers have a lot more on their minds than nuclear war alone. It says the product with the product with the largest increase in search interest in the Jungle Scout data was Uvex Bionic Face Shield that went viral earlier this month in connection with the protests in LA. So people understand that civil war is on the horizon. All right, pretty much the government is essentially against the people. They can see all of these things on the horizon going into that perplexity. I'm gonna get this real fast if you ain't had none, bro.
I just got the definition for perplexity, if I may.
Yeah, you good.
So this is the definition for perplexity. It says the inability to deal with or understand something complicated or unaccountable, an entangled state. And that's what you see the people being in, this entangled state, but also in this ability to not deal with the times. Things is getting harder and harder out here. And I mean, right now people are in a sense of, somewhat being secure, but once things start really getting worse and worse out here, people are really that perplexity is going to continue to rise and rise and rise to the point where, we're about to start seeing, what it talks about in 2nd Ezra, the 15th chapter, and we can get that later on. But you can go ahead, bro.
God, this is 2nd Ezra chapter 16 and verse 21. It says, "Behold, victual shall be so good cheap upon earth that they shall think themselves to be in good case." So things aren't necessarily cheap. It's inflation, you see, but it's not hyperinflation just yet. So it says, "Behold, victuals," going into supplies, resources, and things of that nature. It says, "shall be so good cheap upon earth that they shall think themselves to be in good case, and even then shall evils grow upon earth, sword, famine." All right, and with sword, the sword been growing. It's been an increase in in more violent crimes. All right, it's been an increase in Esau passing different laws and legislations to make it easier to obtain firearms. All right, it's been an increase in the obtaining of different types of weapons. It says famine. All right, famine is increasing. It's a lack of food on the shelves, you see, but then from the food that's ultimately being sold, it's not actually food. A lot of these things are 3D printed, or it's not actually food. It's just fillers. All right, they've been making the containers bigger to make it seem as if you're getting more food, more bang for your buck, but it's not really actually providing the necessary nutrition as what food is supposed to do. So that plays into the famine. Then it says, "and great confusion." it's a increase in perplexity. Nobody knows what's going on. Like it was it been a couple memes and parody videos on social media and stuff like that, but they said 2025, is just one thing after the next. Nobody got no type of stability. They pretty much those in Matthew the seventh chapter. 2/3 of Jake is like those mentioned in Matthew the seventh chapter. And these heathen in America, they don't got they don't got a chance anyway. They gonna be destroyed. Those that's not destroyed, they're gonna be rounded up for slavery.
Right. And just to make a point, in the scriptures it talks about America being that that delicate virgin or something along those lines. But pretty much is going into how like there has been no real war fought here in America. These Americans are very, very soft, very they have been shelled from what reality, I guess you could say, really is. When you go deal with these people in Gaza, they've been through a lot of shit. When you go deal with these other people around these other countries, they've been through a lot of shit. But when you talk about Americans, these Americans haven't really been through nothing. We really haven't gone through no major catastrophe, besides what they call 9/11. So whenever all hell breaks loose, man, or civil war happens, because that's spoken about in the scriptures too. So whenever all these things happen, man, people like that, like we mentioned, this word perplexity, as we have here pulled up, that's going to be at an all-time high. Like I also brought out that one in Jeremiah 50, how people shall be as women, how men shall be as women. It's going to be crazy out here, man.
Mm-hmm.
That's may I get this real quick in 2nd Ezra 15?
Kyle, you got it.
We got this. This is written in the scriptures, going into the famine, but also the civil war and all that. Let me get this real quick. Hold on. I'll start at 12. This is 2nd Ezra 15 and verse 12. It says, Egypt shall mourn, and the foundation of it shall be smitten with the plague, and the punishment, with the plague and punishment that the Most High shall bring upon it. Right, Egypt shall mourn. So that's what we're about to start seeing. People mourning, man. People being more and more in the state of mourning. You're already seeing it now. Like you mentioned, all these pretty much how violence is rising, right? The love of many is waxing cold. I can attest from where I live at right now. It's a small, quiet place, but we've been seeing like shit ramp up, man. Like people like gunning each other down, and it really be Edomites against Edomites. Like scripture says, Egyptian against Egyptians. Of course, that's talking about civil war, but we're seeing the beginning stages of it. There was a mass shooting over here just a couple like 2 months ago. There's been a lot of shit going on. When you go on that one app Newsbreak, it gives you the local news, and man, it's been some crazy shit going on over here. Shit that I never even would even really think about happening over here on this side. But that's really happening all around the United States. It's just not being made. It's not being pushed as much, But it says, verse 13, it says, "They that till the ground shall mourn," talking about the agriculture, man, the farmers. It says, "They that till the ground shall mourn, for their seed shall fail through the blasting and hail, and with the fearful constellation." It's talking about famine. You see,
because
shells about to start going empty. You got it, bro.
Because if I can mention too, in Isaiah the 19th chapter, from verse 5 to 10, it talks about essentially how the Lord is touching the economy. The famine is inside the is dealing with the economy as well. It's right. a lot of food. America makes a lot of money off of food. And America is known to have a lot of food as well. Like it's various different types of food. This place is it's very dependent upon that instantaneous culture, fast food, right. Comfort foods, just like in Rome,
right, microwave society.
Mm-hmm.
Right, but yeah, like you mentioned, this is also talking about the economy, because first of all, people ain't gonna be able to afford the high inflation that we're about to start seeing here soon. You got tariffs on these other countries. on China. Well, I don't know what's going on with that just yet, but I know shit's gonna go up in price. You know what I'm saying? With these wars and these disagreements that these nations are having, you know, best believe, you know, it's gonna start hitting Americans, you know, in their pockets when they're going to the grocery store, whether they're buying stuff online, no matter what it is, you know, people are gonna start hurting, you know. But it says, verse 14, woe to the world and them that dwell therein, for the sword and their destruction draweth nigh, and one people shall stand up and fight against another, and swords in their hands. Talking about a race war, right? These are the things that people are preparing for. That's what people are getting guns. People are stocking up on food, right? Because while they still have the capability to do so, they're out there getting these things, you know, preparing, getting ready, right? You see Esau over there, you know, training in with their guns over there in the range, training in the art of warfare, because they understand what time. I mean, of course, that's in their spirit anyway, you know, to rely on the gun. So even whenever things was good, they were out there hunting and, you know, training their children and how to use a gun and, you know, defend themselves. But it's even more now as we got that article. You know, people are really starting to feel like the urge, the pretty much viewing these things as being necessary for the times that we're coming into.
Because at first, you know, they was finding it necessary, you know, to go get a college degree, you know, join the military, all right, you know, get a good paying corporate job, you know, but more so people are in the mindset of survivability. You know, they're looking at, you know, the emergency kits, all right, the power banks, all right, the gas mask, all right, how they can live off grid, you know, because ultimately people understand that that's what we're coming up into, you know, some very grave times. We're in a time
Right.
of prophecy speaking.
Verse 16, it says, for there shall be sedition among men, and invading one another. They shall not regard their kings nor princes, and the course of their action shall stand in their powers. Right. So going into how, you know, people are going to start going up against their leadership, their politicians, all that. Right. But it says, because of, you know, of the bad management of the cities, the bad laws, you know, because people are starting to realize that these politicians and senators or whatever that they put up in the office, they're not for them. You know, as the scripture says, the Egyptians, how's it go again? Shall sit still, roughly paraphrasing.
Kind of, their strength is to sit still.
Yeah, the strength is to sit still. So these politicians, they're not going to do anything for you when all hell breaks loose, whenever the shelves start to run empty, whenever crime starts to go just wild and rampant, whenever pretty much all hell just starts to hit these people. These politicians ain't going to have nothing, you know, have no word to tell you, and have no how should I say it? Pretty much no alternative method to try to help y'all people, man.
Right, because right now it's orchestrated. You know, it's gonna come a certain point in time to where it's not gonna be orchestrated no more. They're not gonna be pulling the strings, so to speak, on the left hand side. You know, essentially prophecy is gonna pick up. You know, they're not gonna be able to, you know, hide behind that, you know, that cloak of strategically putting the people in the squeeze. You know, because right now, you know, what Esau is doing, all right, you know, with the different you know, the weather and the civil wars and controlling, you know, the famine on the left hand side, he's not gonna be able to do that. You know, it's gonna get out of his grasp. You know,
right? You know, what I'm picturing is pretty much a dude with some knobs, and he's dialing things up, trying to figure out, you know, how much to test. Like he'll pretty much put the squeeze on the people, and then the people start reacting, so he kind of lightens it up a bit, but then he puts the squeeze back on. But he's not gonna be able to do that, like you mentioned, no more. You know, it's gonna get out of his hand to the point where they're not going to be able to bring things back into their control. You know, like you mentioned, prophecy is just going to start hitting them, boom, boom, boom. But it says in verse 17, it says, a man shall desire to go into a city and shall not be able, for because of their pride, the city shall be troubled, the houses shall be destroyed, and men shall be afraid. Right, going into martial law, right? Because it's going to get to a point where like you mentioned, things are gonna get out of hand. They're gonna have to start bringing in the troops. But it says,
Khan, if I can mention too, you know, they
Mhm.
already doing what Esau does is he works in a level of gradualism. So pretty much he's getting the people desensitized to seeing those types of guys that's in that spirit. Because the common law enforcement officer, the common military member, they in the spirit of pretty much the same spirit of these Babylonians you see, but they got Esau has like tiers, with his operators, so pretty much the operators that he has, out on the streets now are just a higher step, a tier above, the regular local, officer. So he's getting the people used to, accustomed to seeing those types of troops, on the streets of America, Babylon the Great, all right, because that's essentially what's coming down the pipe. All right, it's a foreshadowing of what's to come. Those types of team guys, those operators, guys that's in the spirit of just not giving a fuck.
hmm they even mentioned it. Talking about a police state, or
Mm-hmm.
even like but we're seeing more of these policemen. Like you mentioned, wearing more like of a like these this type of military type of gear.
Mm-hmm.
And soon you about start seeing that, being more and more prevalent. A lot of these armories, as I've been noticing, a lot of these armories, especially over here, they've been stocking up with more and more vehicles, like military vehicles. Like,
Mm-hmm.
so that just shows you what the times is, man. Things is something is happening, man, and they're getting prepared for it.
Right.
But it says, verse 19, a man shall have no pity upon his neighbor, but shall destroy their houses with the sword and spoil their goods because of the lack of bread and for great tribulation. See, so this all ties in to what we've been going into, man. Why people are getting prepared, why people are getting ready, right? Because people understand that if you don't have no food, you can't live. If you don't have no water, you can't live. Those are it speaks about that in the book of Sirach, how these are the necessities for life, basic essentials. You know, and if you don't have that, there was a quote also by I can't remember his name. I think it was Kissinger, Henry Kissinger, if I'm not mistaken. Pretty much who mentioned you control the um you control the food, you control the people, right? So they understand that food is essential.
Mm-hmm.
If people don't have food, they're gonna lose them, man. People are just gonna go crazy because they need pretty much food is essential, man. Food is essential for life. So if you don't have food, you can't live. So people are gonna start kicking down doors. It says with swords in their hand, right? Talking about the gun. So all these people that have guns that have been training up and everything, they're gonna start once they run out of their supplies, they're gonna start going to their neighbor, going to the next neighbor. That neighbor that you had, building that bunker, he's gonna get right. He's gonna get his bunker pretty much raided and pillaged. All these things. This is what people are afraid of and people are preparing for.
Right. Con, did you still had the video queued up?
Yeah, Con. Let me play this. So this is from News Nation. So the title says, "Fearful Americans turn to prepared citizen movement for survival skills." So let me play this.
News Nation's Alex Capriello joins us live. Alex, you visited one of these training sites. Tell us about it.
Yeah, I did, Elizabeth, and I had a chance to listen to the teachings from these gun instructors, which weren't exactly political in nature, although they did express a general sense of uneasiness about the world around us. It's part of the reason why we're seeing Americans take matters into their own hands, preparing both guns and their bodies for battle, just in case they find themselves in a dogfight.
They're not enlisted, though they dress ready for war. They don't have military training, though they can reliably hit targets 3 football fields away. What they do have is fear of violent crime, civil unrest, even foreign invasion. And here, deep in the sticks of Central Florida, these everyday Americans gather with guns in hand, training for the day they will need to keep themselves safe by any means necessary.
In your opinion, the world is more safe when we know how to use guns?
Oh, 100%.
Air Force veteran Eric Rocher leads the shooters in these military-style combat trainings. When Russia invaded Ukraine and civilians were forced to take up arms, Rocher decided he didn't want to see Americans succumb to the same fate.
They were trying to learn how to shoot literally days before the Russians invaded. And so they were almost like helpless. And I was like, in America, we shouldn't have that problem.
As an Air Force tactical specialist, he knows techniques, disciplines, and standards that most civilians don't.
This should be information that every citizen should know about because it creates a better shooter, a safer shooter, a more defendable country.
More than 90% of the men and women who come to the Barrel and Hatchet open gyms aren't currently serving in the military, veterans, or members of law enforcement. They're actually everyday citizens, just like you and I.
Take Dan Pham, for example. He's a civil engineer that builds robots. Brandon Jordan, he's a YouTube content creator. And Angela Clow is an exercise physiologist.
I'm this very loving, caring girl, but I can be fierce.
When I spoke to them, every single one said they want to be prepared for any threat, and they expressed deep concern about our country and our world.
Riots, elections, foreign wars, people realizing that their safety is their own personal responsibility. No one's coming to save them. So they're going to have to be able to defend themselves and take matters into their own hands if they need to.
From the outside looking in, it looks like they're building a militia, but they insist they're not. Instead, they're among a growing cohort of prepared citizens, everyday folks worried about a near future where gun smoke fills the air. They just want to make sure it's coming from their guns.
I think that a lot more people are kind of feeling like something is coming globally. And so because of that, there is a sense of urgency to be able to train, to get their family equipped with training.
For the first time in more than 30 years, recent polling shows more Americans have guns in their homes than not. 1 in 5 gun owners now own AR-15 style semi-automatic rifles, with the majority saying they bought it for self-defense. And overall, more than 26 million Americans purchased their first gun in the last 5 years, with some of the greatest surges coming from African Americans, women, and liberal voters. That's more than the entire population of Florida.
It's not cops. It's not veterans. It's not current military.
No.
It's teachers. It's software engineers.
Dentists, yeah.
It's dentists.
Yeah.
It's lawyers. It's
Yeah.
doctors. Why would a dentist need to know how to shoot a rifle 300 yards?
I have a responsibility to protect myself and my family. You know, if I need help, if I have to call law enforcement, it's 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, and usually that's way too long. So I need to be able to perform on command when the time comes, if the time comes, God forbid.
These civilians hope they never have to put their training to use. But if any of their worst case scenarios materialize, they won't be going down without a fight.
The more that people kind of see what we're doing, they understand our purpose is the brotherhood and in doing something together that we enjoy. That's also a useful tool in the event of a bad scenario. That's what we're doing. We're not doomsday preppers out here.
I know you didn't. You didn't.
And pretty much,
Advanced weapons.
if I could add, it's a lot. Technically, you know, they would be considered like doomsday preppers,
Yep.
you know, but it said that 1 in 5 people that do own guns, they pretty much 25% of them, if I'm not mistaken, said that they own ARs, and that type of weaponry is for multiple people, so pretty much why I bring that point out is because they understand that these are the times that we're living in. I'm gonna get a quick precept. Did you have anything else, bro?
Yeah. But you can go ahead and get yours first.
Con, this is Isaiah chapter 13 and verse 1. It says, the burden of Babylon, which Isaiah the son of Amos did see. All right, and that burden, all right, I want to get that word for burden. And it says mash'ah, and it says a load, a bearing. It says an utterance, an oracle, a burden. And it says figuratively an utterance, chiefly a doom. And it says especially mental. All right, so pretty much the point I wanted to get was, it's chiefly a doom, and these Babylonians understand that, doomsday is coming,
Mm-hmm. I got this for you. This is 2nd Ezra's 9 and 5. As a matter of fact, damn, I'll probably start at 1 to be honest. This is 2nd Ezra's 9 and 1. It says, "He answered me then and said, measure thou the time diligently in itself, and when thou seest part of the signs past, which I have told you before, then then shalt thou understand that it is the very same time wherein the highest will begin to visit the world which he made, right? And those signs that that was given, of course, were pretty much the things that we're seeing now, right? War, the rumors of war, earthquakes in diverse places, uproars of the people. These are the things that we're seeing happen. Famine, but this is showing you that the times that we're into is it has to be the end, especially since the prophets are out here. That further validates that we're in the end times. But verse 3, it says, therefore, when there shall be seen earthquakes and uproars of the people in the world, right, going into them signs. Verse 4, then shalt thou well understand that the Most High spake of those things from the days that were before thee, even from the beginning. Like you mentioned earlier, the end was prophesied from the beginning. So this warning has always been the same, as far as from previous prophets, from previous times. In the book of Jeremiah, it talks about how the prophets before thee and before me of old have prophesied both against many countries of war, evil, and a pestilence. And that's what we're coming in that same spirit of prophesying that doom, man, that impending doom that's about to come upon America. But it says in verse 5, for like all that is made in the world hath a beginning and an end, and the end is manifest. It's obvious, right? That word manifest going into obvious. It's to the point where even the heathen are seeing it, even though they won't admit to what we're saying is being true. They know that something is coming. That's why they're getting ready. They're out there in the range practicing shooting, right? Preparing for a more colder world. Something that they mentioned was Russia, an invasion happening on American soil. That reminds me of that movie Red Dawn. I don't know if you watched that movie, bro. But pretty much that goes into how pretty much it's going to be like war on the streets. People are going to be starting their own militias, getting their guns ready, and fight against an enemy here in American soil, right? But like you mentioned, these are pretty much doomsday preppers. Even though they might not say that they are, they're really doomsday preppers, because if there was no doom coming, then why prepare?
Right.
If peace was coming, there'll be no need for preparing for these events. But let me get something real quick I wanted to get, because this all goes back to this, right? Ecclesiastes 3 in verse 1, it says, to everything there is a season and a time of every purpose under heaven. Right? To every time there's a season, man. And we're in a season of war, a season of pretty much this place getting torn down. Let me get that right here. Bear with me. Right here. I'm gonna start at 6. Ecclesiastes 3 and 6. A time to get and a time to lose, a time to keep and a time to cast away. Right now's the time for this place to lose, man. Americans are about to lose big time. But it says a time to rend and a time to sow, a time to keep silence and a time to speak, a time to love and a time to hate, a time of war and a time of peace, right? The time of peace is long gone, man. Now we're in a time of war, a time to hate. Like we mentioned, quoted, love of many shall wax cold. What was that, Matthew 24?
Mm-hmm.
That time is here, man. With the current events as it is, and your local news reporting all these killings, that shows you what times we're living in, and the mindset of the people. Because people are really fed up with the current state of America. I had this one screenshot, really like an image. What do they call it? Infograph. But pretty much they were talking about how people are like, or there was like a high rise, like 24% of people, taking drugs, or using certain type of narcotics. Pretty much people are just getting high, trying to escape this reality, because people are fed up. Back then, people had like a carrot in their face. It would be the American dream. They would have to run and chase, and work all these long hours just to attain that. But now the American dream is for most people is pretty much feeling unfeasible and it is unfeasible. So people are just relying on drugs, trying to just to get by. People are just barely getting by. And then with all these more things bombarding on top of their heads about war, what's it called, a draft coming, famine on your shelves, all these things just hitting people, boom, boom, one after another, just getting hit over the head with this shit. People are just really fed up, man, to the point where any little thing, can set them off.
Right.
Just one little thing, can make somebody crash out. As I see a lot of crash outs out here nowadays. Any little thing can set a motherfucker off and just motherfucker go around, spin the block, or commit some mass shooting in some grocery store, all because somebody, maybe the person at the other side of the counter, gave him a bad look, or handed their debit card back to them, in a roughly or whatever, or maybe the goddamn somebody cut them off in traffic. Now they're out here, ready to die for that. But this is the times that we're coming into. This is the mindset of the people, right? This is the times that we're living in.
That was pretty much all I had, bro.
Con. Let me get this. And I'll close it off with this. This is 2nd Ezra 14. I'll start at 13. It says, "Now therefore set thine house in order, and reprove thy people. Comfort such of them as be in trouble, and now renounce corruption." Right, and that's what we're doing. Right, starting with our people. Well, really starting with our own people, with our own house, but also to the rest of our people. We're reproving our people, getting our house in order. Pretty much getting our people ready for what's really coming, right? But how do you get ready? You don't get ready by stocking up your shelves. Now all those things, even though it could be some wisdom to that, to prepare yourself. But we understand that stuff is not going to deliver you in the times that we're coming into. None of that stuff is going to be your, how should I say, your saving grace, But it says, "Let go from the mortal thoughts, cast away the burdens of man, put off now the weak nature, and set aside the thoughts that are most heavy unto thee, and haste thee to flee from these times." You see? And how you do that? The scriptures talk about how the name of the Lord is a strong tower, the righteous runneth into it and is safe, right? So you got to turn back to your power. You got, especially, I'm talking to you, so-called blacks, Latinos, Native Americans, which make up the house of Israel. Y'all got to return back to Yahweh B'Shem Yahushua. Repent and turn back to the Lord, because that's the only way you're going to be delivered. Let's say you do make it through Jacob's trouble. You do survive. Jake over here talking about rambling, these types of times. You can stock up and, have your gun and everything. But what the hell are you going to do against 200 million warheads raining upon your head, man? There's nothing you can do about that. That's ultimately what we're talking about, escaping that type of judgment, right? The second death, as the scriptures talk about. You see? But verse 16, it says, "For yet greater evils than those which thou hast seen happen shall be done hereafter." Right? Like I said, things are just getting started. Things ain't even really gotten to the point where these things are necessary. But people are seeing that it could be a necessity for these type of preparations. But soon, like I said, all these things is going to, come to a head to where, prophecy is just going to start, raining upon people, man. But you got it, bro. Unless that was it.
That's pretty much it.
All right, Khan. So with that, we're going to go ahead and close it out by giving all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh B'Hashem Yahushai, B'Hashem Recha HaKodash. Double honors to the apostles and the elders of Great Millstone who taught us his truth and ruled well. Peace and blessings to the hopeful elect pushing his word throughout the four corners of the earth in truth, righteousness, and sincerity. Until the next time, we're going to say Shalom.
Shalom. Kwame Shala.